We are live.
All right, all right. Yes, indeed. We want to thank everybody for tuning in for another episode of the King and I Life podcast. Hope everybody's feeling good out there. Please like, subscribe us on Facebook. Hit that notification. Um, Again, we are on YouTube as well, and we are building up our stockpile for Patreon. So everybody be on the lookout for that. And this is Son So Lex hollering at you with my homeboy King.
That man, so touch of the poet in the house, ladies and
Yes,
gentlemen.
sir. So again, we got a good topic. I think this one might have people really thinking about some days back in the past, growing up.
Not only that, I think is going to have people thinking about how this whole thing affected and affects them and their children.
Right. So we're going to be talking about two parents versus single parent households and how that affected you and what kind of role that played in your life.
Yes, indeed.
Many children grow up in single parents households. We both have the experience of this in our lives. My mom and dad were married, but for a lot of years, my father would be in and out due to his military career. So he was there, but not there.
Yeah, and for me, I never knew my biological father until I was 25. Um, my mother was married to my youngest sister up until I want to say, uh, they were married, but probably in like 75, 76, somewhere around there. And they probably got divorced probably around 80. Well, they probably separated at like 88. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't have the luxury or the foundation of a two parent household. So I can speak from it from my end, you know.
Right. I'll say there were a lot of times growing up where my parents they moved together as a team and worked together, to raise me and my sisters the best they could. Again with the time that my father was there. Um, but a lot of it was on my mom because she had to, hold the household together, make sure the bills are paid, uh, make sure, we as her children were taken care of, that, our homework was done, we were properly clothed and fed, and um, were able to bond as a family, even though, my father was there, but again, not there. So speaking from that aspect of that kind of household, um, I can say back then I really didn't understand it too much, but the older I got, that's when it started to come into focus for me a little bit. So at that point, I was like I was fully aware of what it was that my father was doing. So
Right.
it's one of those things you just have to accept it and keep pushing. So from a household where I had both parents, I can truly say I definitely feel blessed to have had that experience growing up.
Hmm. So for you, for you growing up in that situation, how did you look at um, you know, friends, family members who grew up with one parent, whether it was a mother or just a father?
For the most part, uh, I really didn't notice it that much
Mm.
because um, a lot of my mom's her friends, the ones who were single, um, when they came over, it was just like your cousins coming over. You know what I mean? Like you played, you cut the food, you pretty much did anything and everything you wanted to do. You know, besides get a butt whooping when you got out of line. But um, all of her friends, we pretty much looked at them as aunties. Like
Mm.
that's just what it was. Um, and you got our ass whooped by our aunties too when my mom wasn't around. So I guess that's one of the things that actually helped, keep us in line. And it was the same way when we visited some of her friends' house. My mom really didn't have any male friends that um, came around. Um, of course, those one of the rules. I don't give a damn about you talking about them on the phone. High school friends. Whatever the case may be, but don't bring your male friends around my kids. And my
Mm.
mom respected that, so that was cool. But as far as like my mom's friends and their male counterparts, they were all pretty cool. As far as I seen, they took care. Uh, I guess you can say their step kids pretty good. Um, I wasn't around that much to say that those kids were mistreated in any kind of way. But back then, we all, again, no matter what household we're at, we're kind of like family. So everybody pretty much knew everybody else's business. As kids, you know what I'm saying? They be telling you, go outside, don't be looking in grown folks' mouth, and don't be listening to grown folks' conversation. But sometimes you just trapped in that environment, whether you want to hear it or not.
Mm.
So it's cool for me though. I had no problems. How
Yeah,
about you?
yeah. Like I say, for me, like not um not knowing my biological father till I was like 25, and you know, for me having a stepfather, it's one thing to have a stepfather and you're aware of it, and then it's another thing to have a stepfather and not know anything of the truth. So that's one dynamic of it. Um, so I would say growing up in a single parent household for me, my experience is, although I didn't have a horrible childhood, it was difficult because it was my mother, just my mother most of the time. Like when we was in, and I have to throw in, it's a difference when you're a military child because it's a whole different ball game when it comes to a lot of things because when you're overseas or in another state, you don't have family around or like that. So if you just, with your mother or just with your father, however the dynamic is, you're relying on that one parent for everything, and that parent can't always be certain places. For instance, if you're into sports, um, and for a lot of times, you got the soccer moms and this, that, other. Mom is there at the games or whatever. Um, but when you just have your mother and your mother has to work or do other things, take care of your other sibling or siblings, um, you kind of miss out on certain things. And when it comes to how I felt looking at kids with two parents in the house, I had sort of a jealousy and a resentment because it was like, you know, why can't I have that? They have a mother and a father in the house. Um, I just have a mother, and my mother is doing all of this, that, and the other. And she may have different stresses that you know children with two parents don't have. So, as a child in a single parent household, you feel that strain. You feel that emotionally. You feel that in all kind of ways, and it's really hard to comprehend and understand, especially when you're a child and you don't fully comprehend the dynamics of adult life. You don't you can't your brain doesn't allow you to fully articulate that difference in that relationship situation. So it is a struggle depending on the situation that you're in. Um, for some, if you are in a you know a more comfortable income class, it's not as hard. But for a lot of us, it's a struggle because if you have a single black mother, you already know how that is in the workplace, and for them being a woman, period, it's even harder. So they have
Right.
those stresses, and those stresses do come back to the household, and a lot of times it is taken out on the child.
Oh wow. Um, I will say this though. A lot of times, the pressure I saw my mom go through with my father being gone so often. Um, it's kind of like you wanted to help, but you didn't know how to help. You know what I mean? Like being so young, you understand that there are certain roles that men play. You know, especially when it comes to a family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I saw her stressing, like, how in the hell am I going to get this done or get that done?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being surrounded by other female military wives, that helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think just having those people to talk to, and a lot of times they help my mom out, and she helped them out by picking up us from school, or her friends, uh, kids from school, or running little small errands and things of that nature. But again, just growing up in that environment and watching her from the daily struggles or the daily tasks. I say that the daily tasks of trying to balance everything while um, being a support system for my father when he might be going through certain things, work related or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely take my hat off to any female, in that military environment, because it's not easy no matter what role you play, whether you're a military wife or you're a single mother raising a kid in the military. Because there are a lot of kids that my mom would babysit um, for some of her female friends, and they be gone in the field for weeks on end, and a lot of times my mom won't hear anything from these females for a good amount of time, and she'd be like, you at least need to call and check on your kid. Like, don't go and disappear like that. But it is what it is, and it was what it was. So, but does this contribute to mental, emotional, and educational struggles, you think?
It does. It does. It definitely does. When it comes to mental and emotional, let me see how I can put this. For me, I will say this. Um, Mentally and emotionally, I had tended to carry resentment and guilt that I didn't bring on. Like, for instance, I got, I had a lot of things said to me that wasn't warranted, and looking back on it, I can say, well, it's because you were in this situation, you were stressed, you were bitter, you were this, you were that, and you know, me being your child, I was the closest target. Um, so when you have that going on, like you have this single mother um, who has to take care of these two kids, and she's barely getting by or whatever the case may be. Because back then in the military, um, pay wasn't what it is today. So and that was the only income, and it's a lot of times we had to go without things. We always had food, we always had clothes on our back, but it's those luxury things that we kind of didn't get. um it's those school activities that sometimes we had to pass over. It's a lot of things like that, and I think that when you look at other kids and let's just say you wanted that fresh pair of shoes, and you ain't had a new pair of shoes in probably 6 months to a year, and you see these, your friends or whatever, they got the latest shoes, this, that, and the other, and it's like, I just want a new pair of shoes. um and you can't get that because you behind the eight ball. You just got one parent. um you and then on top of that, and I also say it really doesn't matter if it's military or civilian, because but it doesn't matter in a sense, but it matters in a sense that when you're a military child, or even though you have those same unique struggles
All right.
in the military community, it's easier to look at it as a village, because it's easy for, let's just say, if I was with a single, I had a single mother, you got two parents, and let's just say our parents were friends or whatever the case may be, and me and you are friends, it's easy for us to be looked out for in that sense, because it's like we are that little community, in our little bubble. Now, when you're in the civilian world, and you may not have those luxuries like that, so you may not have that other emotional backing, you may not have that other piece of mental support, so you do miss out on those things like that. And if your parent is not a nurturing parent, meaning they're not fully engaged in your emotional well-being or your mental well-being, you really suffer. It really takes a toll on you, and you really carry that for a while, um, unless you are a strong-minded individual and you have been raised to be able to identify those things and cope with it better. Um,
Right.
when it comes to education, man, that goes back to everything else I was saying. If you don't have that parent that is grounded and their head is fully in the game, you do miss out on certain things, because it's like, when it came to school, um, my mother was like, you bet not fail, you bet not this, you bet not that. It was no, all right, let's sit down and go through this. Let's sit down and go over that. Let's sit down and do this. Let's sit down and do that. It was always a aggressive nature to it, and it kind of made me for the longest time, even in elementary school, like when I was learning multiplication tables back when they used to do that. um, you know, I struggled with that for a while. And it was no, let's sit down and do this, let's sit down and do that. It was, you go in your room and you better not come out until you learn that. And it's like, looking back at that, it's like, how the hell was I going to learn it? I had no clue, you know?
Right.
So, it yeah, mentally, emotionally, in education, if you have a single parent household and that one parent is not nurturing, you really have the tendency to suffer.
Oh, I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, my mom, I think she applied what she knew to apply,
Mm-hmm.
but as a child, who's used to having that father figure, in the household, and then when he was missing, uh, it's always like I'm missing my dad. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, having a mom is cool, but uh, I much rather do things with my dad, especially when it came down to homework and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was a little bit more like, I'll sit down with you and do it. And my mom was, again, on the other side of that, was like, the stuff she could help me with, she would. And then the other stuff that she couldn't help me with, she would, have my older sister to help me with. But I think there was some type of, I'm not going to say resentment, but there was a little bit of energy surrounding that relationship, because my dad, again, he's out doing his thing. He's, living his career and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get higher ranks and, just doing that whole life of being a military man. And I think she kind of, again, for lack of a better word, resented it to a certain extent, because she felt like, you're out doing this and that and this and, experiencing all these great things, but I'm here, holding down the household. So again, I think it's one of those things that, by her being so young, and having, two kids, um, it kind of put her in a place where, she felt like she could have did more in life, you know, had the opportunities been given to her. But because she chose to be, a military wife and, to help raise a family, it kind of like it shopped her or stopped her short from achieving, her true greatness. Um, but again, I think that comes down to, everybody has to make a choice.
Yeah.
And again, when you are that young and having a family so young, then it's kind of like you get it only after the fact that, okay, I'm this, you know, number of years old. I got, these two kids, and there are so many other things I would like to do with my life. But because I didn't know back then that I would be here now, it kind of built up that thing with her of, I could have did something great. I had other dreams and aspirations, but here I am.
Yeah.
But
You know, to add on to that, um, uh, it it kind of doesn't help education wise. It doesn't help. Okay, so if you're a child in a single parent household, that child in that situation, it doesn't really help them understand or learn or know how to manage a household when they get older. Um, because this is something that's not really taught in school, and if you don't learn it at home,
right.
where do you learn it at? TV, um, looking at what's going on in your friend's house or your cousin's house or whatever the case may be, but you don't get that firsthand education as far as manage a two-parent household. Um, and that leads some of us to make poor decisions when it's our turn to have a family. And I say that because I had always vowed to be like, my child is not going to grow up like that. I refuse to put my child in that position, but I never had the education as far as, hey, I never had anyone really sit me down and groom me for being a father and a husband and raising a child all in one unit. I didn't have that. I wasn't given that. I wasn't taught that. I wasn't even um, for lack of better, I wasn't warned about the hazards of that. So when I had my first child, my mindset was, my child's not gonna grow up like that. My child is gonna know me. We're gonna be together. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. But it's like, I'm too young for all that. I'm not prepared for all of that. I had it in my mind what I was going to do, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to sustain it. And I can say that my oldest child probably suffered from that because he had a lot of resentment from not having two parents in the same household where he saw his friends having that. So he carried a lot of resentment with that. And for the longest time, his thing was, y'all need to get back together. Y'all need to get back together. And it's like, nah, we're not getting back together. We good. We good
Hmm.
how we are. We communicate, we get along, we this, we that. But he held on to that resentment. And it's like, when a child has that deep seated resentment from that, it's hard to get them out of that mentally.
Right.
It's hard to get them out of that emotionally because they're looking at their friends or cousins or whatever with two parents in the household, and here you are, this child with no parent. And then you also have to take into account that sometimes kids get picked on and bullied because of that. Oh, you don't have no father. You this, you that, and that weighs on the child mentally and emotionally. Um, I would say, thankfully, I was never in a situation to where I was treated like that. Oh, you don't have no father. Blah blah blah. Um, I wasn't bullied. I didn't have that deep seated resentment because I
Right.
did not have a father in the house. My resentment was because I was always lied to about it. So it played that role on me, and it forced me to not make smart decisions because I wasn't educated in that, and it also took a toll on me mentally and emotionally, but not to the point where it caused me to continue to make piss poor decisions. Now, with my second son, um, I said I was going to do better. Me and his mother weren't together, but we have a healthy relationship. She's married, got a husband, and and for me, the thing that I wanted to make sure of is that my son knows that he has a stepfather and a biological father, and he sees all of us getting along. That way, he's in a healthy situation right there, and he has a healthy blended situation that he can say, well, I got two dads. Um, Even his little brother that he has, that his mother and his stepfather had, his little brother calls me dad. Um, I go to my
Oh,
son's
cool.
games and stuff, and he runs up, gives me a hug, and then he literally steps back, put his hands on his hips like Superman. He said, I have two dads here. Why do I have two dads here? And you know, it's stuff like that that is so healthy and it's admirable that
Right.
it eliminates that whole mental, emotional, and educational uh, default that a lot of us have.
Wow, that is cool. I'll say for my dad, though, with him growing up in a household where he wasn't even raised by his mom or his dad, um,
Hmm.
he was actually raised by his grandmother's auntie. But we, far as I knew growing up, that was my grandma,
Right.
because my real grandma, she was so busy with her nursing career that I knew she was there, but she wasn't there. She was always off doing other things.
Hmm.
But for him, I definitely could see the hurt, um, and the pain that he experienced growing up without having both of his parents in his life like that. Um, I don't know. I don't know if it was just straight determination he had to make sure that we stayed together as a family, or if it just naturally worked out like that. Cause there were a couple times I was like looking at my dad like, "Nigga, you still here?"
I
Meaning my mom wasn't always the easiest person to get along with. But I don't know. He in my eyes, I think he did the very best he could with the circumstances he had. Again, not having anyone to raise him, to show him, what a real man, you know, or a man, should conduct himself. But I think he had strong male figures in his life, and that's kind of like one of the things that I experienced growing up
hmm
was, yeah, I have a father, but my uncles, I had two uncles on my dad's side, and I had like four uncles on my mom's side. So all of them, played a significant role on and in, showing me how to conduct myself. So I I guess I just gotta say that the male figures in my life, they stepped up even though they didn't have to. They really played their role. So
Yeah,
while he wasn't there, that was basically what I had to lean on.
yeah. I think it does matter. Um, Even if you don't have that father in the house or you don't have that mother in the house, it also matters who else is around. If you have those other key players around and they're teaching that child um, to do things a better way than what they're experiencing, it helps them later on in life. But ladies and gentlemen, it's the King and I Life podcast. That is part one of two parent versus single parent households, and we will be back with you on this topic again. Follow us on whatever podcast platform that you prefer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and we will be back with part two.